Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate you taking the time to be here as we discuss an important topic that impacts our district. Along with me this evening, I'm pleased to welcome Robert Finger, consultant to the district, Kevin Campbell, our business administrator and board secretary, and general counsel Michael Inselbuck. The agenda for tonight's meeting is as follows. First, we will explore how school funding is determined and what it means for our district in regard to financial implications and resource allocation. Then we will give everyone an opportunity to ask questions. To ensure an efficient and productive meeting, we ask that all questions be held until the question and answer session. Additionally, please make sure you remain muted when not speaking in order to minimize background noise. Again, thank you for being here, and let's get started. Mr. Finger?
Well, before Mr. Finger, I wanted to say a few opening words. We are all in this together. The staff, our cherished staff of close to 1,000, the Board of Education, the 9 members who serve on a voluntary basis, and the administration. We have made it clear to the state that there will be no reductions in force. We will not be letting go of any teachers. And that is your commitment, Dr. Winters, to the staff, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Lakewood is unique in that we have a district of approximately 4,500 public school students and more than 50,000 non-public students. Despite temptation, this is not a battle between public and non-public, because the monies we spend on public and non-public are all mandated. Whether it be transportation, where both public and non-public and private schools have the same rights, that is a large ticket item in our district. Special education, whether a student goes to Clifton, the high school, Collier School, Shy, Center, and the more than 20 other schools where kids are sent by the way of IEPs, all of those students are considered public. We have learned that the problem is not unique to Lakewood. What is going on here is happening, if you look very close by, in Jackson, Howell, Toms River, where there is no such commitment by the administration and board that there will be no rifts. Lakewood is unique. I'll just give you one example. In addition to the 4,500 public and 50,000 non-public, we have more than 38 classification categories and diagnosis categories of kids with special education needs. As some of you know, I do this throughout the state. I primarily sue districts. And when I bring up some of the names of the genetic diseases we have here, which require specialized services, they've never heard about them. We're going to hear from Mr. Finger why the SFRA formula does not work for Lakewood, something that's been discussed for more than 10 to 15 years. The need for cash and the need for a budget has been known to the state since last March. There are no surprises. In the approved budget, there was a request for a $104 million loan. I will break some good news. I don't have a letter, but I have good word that the state will be letting us know. Again, when I see it, I'll believe it, but what I've been told is they'll be letting us know that they are giving us an additional $65 million, 32.5 in February, because as of February 22nd, we don't have enough cash to pay our bills, and then another 32.5 in May. That has not been officially confirmed, but we've heard ruminations of that. And before our next board meeting, which is next week, we've been told that we should be getting a letter. Nevertheless, local, county, and state officials who are paying attention to our budget all agree that we need no less than $105 million to not enter into deficit this year. Being a proud Lakewood graduate, that means we're short about 40 or 45 million even after we get the 65 million. But we have been told, hopefully, that is not a final number, but that is a number that we have been told about. I'll give you one example how non-public is helping public. You don't always hear that. But we've been borrowing from non-public funds called special revenue funds to be able to pay for public funds. For example, there are various non-public funds which are dedicated to non-public, such as Chapter 192, 193, nursing textbooks that are front-loaded to our budget by the state, which we've been using to pay for teacher salaries, transportation, and other such things. We want to thank the LEA for collaborating with us, because some people would love to see us all going at each other's heads, which would be basically a subterfuge to the real problem. Give me 1 second. But again, there will be no layoffs at this time. And the superintendent has told the board that she will not be part of any layoffs. There is attrition when people retire and things like that. We may not replace them, but that's different than laying off people. So without further ado, I want to turn this over to Mr. Finger. As you know, Mr. Finger was our business administrator for many years, our business consultant, as well as a former state monitor. So Mr. Finger.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, everybody, for coming out on Zoom, so at least we didn't have to go out in the snow tonight. It's no secret that the district has been underfunded for years. About a month or so ago, the board approached me and asked if I would do a review of the most current year that just ended, the 23-24 school year, to see just how underfunded the district actually is. So let's start with how the school funding formula works. First of all, New Jersey has probably one of the most complicated funding formulas of all the 50 states. There are actually states out there that their funding formula is relatively simple. They have a dollar value. You fill out a form. You say, I have 1,000 kids times the dollar value. And here's my state aid. If you actually go in and took the time to look at 18A and the section on state aid, it probably goes on for over 100 pages on just how it's calculated. We could spend hours discussing that, but we're not going to tonight because your eyes would glaze over and you would just zone out. So I'm going to distill it down to its most basic premise. The school funding formula in New Jersey clearly says that a district's budget you should be able to have a budget that provides a thorough and efficient education with a combination of local tax levy, which are property taxes, which are capped at 2% each year, and what they call categorical state aid. That's the formula-driven state aid. There are other forms of state aid as well, but the statute says those two items, local tax levy, categorical state aid, should equal what they call your adequacy budget. Adequacy meaning that you've met the minimum requirements to provide T&E. While that works up until a few years ago, for most districts, there are districts out there that are in serious problems, not like Lakewood's problems, which are systemic for so many years. But as you've seen, there are districts out there right now that had to raise their taxes up by, instead of 2%, by 10% because they were losing state aid. Luckily, we actually haven't lost state aid. We've actually gotten additional state aid each year, but very, very minimal amounts. But the funding formula says if you take those two together, it equals your adequacy budget, and you could have provide T&E education. Okay. Does that work in Lakewood? No, it does not. We looked at the 23-24 school year, last completed year. It's been audited, so all the numbers are accurate and are not based on projections. They're real, actual numbers. And the facts will be very surprising. Categorical aid, that formula-driven aid under the school funding formula, provides a whopping 9% of our revenues. Not 90%, 9%. The local tax levy, which is high in Ocean County amongst the school districts, our local tax levy provides 40% of the funding. So the state funding formula says if you take that categorical formula-driven aid and your local tax levy, you've got a budget. Not in Lakewood. It barely covers even 50%. How do we make up that difference? Well, since the 2014-15 school year, we make up that difference by asking the state for loans. Now, these are not interest-bearing loans, paid back over 10 years. Has the state given loans to other school districts that have had problems? Yes. And most of the time, those loans are paid back in a shorter amount of time because it's a one-time, one-shot loan. We have received a loan in the Lakewood School District for every school year except for one, because we had federal American Rescue Plan funds. I believe that was the 21-22 school year. We have received a loan every year since 2014-15.
Ah,
Hello, anyone there? Okay. Let's see.
Please mute yourself. If you're not, please mute yourself.
And at this point now, it is unlikely that the district is not going to not be receiving a loan for quite some time. The only good news, if there is any good news to all of this, is that in 2014, a lawsuit was filed on behalf of the district. The lawsuit, if you look it up, is known as Alcantara versus Hespe. Alcantara was the last name of the student who filed the lawsuit. Hespe was the state commissioner of education at the time. It has now gone up to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, it's gone up through the appellate division. That's one step below the state Supreme Court. We've won on every level. It is, even the appellate division has said it is a revenue problem, not an expenditure problem in the district. And when will this get finally settled? Your guess is as good as mine. If we look at the past lawsuits for state aid, what was known as the Abbott versus Burke decision, which gave 30 districts additional state aid. They became known as Abbott districts. Here in Monmouth County, you've got locally, you've got Neptune, Long Branch, Asbury Park, and Keensburg. That lawsuit took about 11 or 12 years until the Supreme Court finally settled it. And even at the point when the Supreme Court will settle the case, all they're going to do is make a decision on what, the district should get more aid, and they turn it back to the legislature. And then that takes, the Abbott case took about another 2 years. But we are reaching, there is the light at the end of the tunnel. And we haven't lost, am I correct, Michael? We haven't lost at any level.
That is correct.
We all agreed that the funding formula does not work. Anyway, getting back to 23-24, how did we make up that 51% more that we needed? Well, one, we got a loan that provided about 25%. There was the federal American Rescue Plan funds that contributed another 19%. Then there were two forms of state aid that districts get at the end of the school year: extraordinary aid for special ed and transportation aid for non-public students. Those two combined gave us about 7% more. So we were able to balance our budget and provide a T&E education. Keep in mind, though, the problem, those American Rescue Plan funds are no longer available. That was a federal program for 3 years. Those funds have been fully expended. Last year, 23-24, the district got a $50 million loan. This year, they're asking for 104. It will probably be somewhere in that area, 104 to 110 million when it all thrashes out at the end. That loan amount will just keep going up and up and has gone up and up every year since 2014-15. To give you an idea of how much, and it's a little mind-boggling. If the district for this year, for 24-25, gets the 110 million, I'm just using that as a placeholder right now. If the 110 million is the final number, the district would have borrowed from the state since 2014-15 a little over $325 million. To date, they've paid back about $81 million. That would leave them in debt still for $244 million. The problem again is the loans will never ever get paid off because until there's a change to the funding formula, the district will always, every single year, need to get a loan in order to provide a thorough and efficient education. So at this point right now, as I said, in the lawsuit with the state and up through the appellate division, that's all been in agreement that it is a revenue problem. We've even had former state monitors testify in court that it was a revenue problem. We've even had an audit done by the Office of Legislative Services, a nonpartisan office of auditors that work for the legislature, who said it's a revenue problem and it needs to be addressed by the courts and by the legislature. Everybody knows it. The state knows it. The problem is getting the legislature to act. And the legislature, like I said, in the Abbott versus Burke case, did not act until they were forced to act by the court. So hopefully we're getting to that point. But in the meantime, we still need to get loans. And it's clear a district is not going to need a loan if they're getting enough state aid and they have enough local tax levy to cover it. Now, some of the districts around in the surrounding area here across the state due to loss of state aid were able to raise their tax levy up to 10%. We didn't qualify for that because we actually got more state aid, even though it was very minimal. And so we were not required to raise our taxes up by the full 10%. We only had to go up 2%. But keep in mind, even if the district had raised it by 10%, it still would not have closed a $104 million loan request. You weren't going to make up that kind of money in tax levy. As a matter of fact, in the state law, this is where you're getting a little more complicated, but in the school funding formula, there is something as what they refer to as fair share. That's also a calculated number of what the maximum tax levy could be in any given municipality, in any given school district. Even if, and we don't have authority to go above that 2% cap and go up to that fair share unless you had a referendum and the voters approved it, or unless there was a state law mandating it. But right now, that is not the case. But even if the district could have raised their tax levy in 23-24 to the full fair share, they would have still needed a loan. So even with that part of the school funding formula saying, oh, even if you went up, if the local tax levy is not enough rate and you could raise it to the full fair share, that still would not have negated the need for a loan. So it's clearly a revenue problem. It is clearly something that the legislature needs to act on, and they've known they've needed to act on it for years. One other thing. In 23-24, extraordinary aid that you get at year end for special ed, that's yet another area where the state historically underfunds that aid program. They underfunded it to the extent that had it been fully funded, and it has not been fully funded in years, but had it been fully funded, this district would have received an additional $9 million in extraordinary aid, which would have made the loan $9 million less. So the legislature and the funding formula pretty much, put it in a technical accounting term, really screws the district royally and has been doing it since 2014-15, both on the categorical aid side, which only gives us 9%, all the way to extraordinary aid, which shortchanged us by $9 million last year. Again, the Department of Ed knows this. their hands, I mean, I'm not sticking up for them, but I will tell you their hands technically are tied. Even if they wanted to give us more aid legally, they cannot. All they can do by law is offer a loan. Um, what is interesting is that from what I've heard from several people, even though the Department of Treasury, the state treasurer knows and knew last March that the Lakewood district would need at least $100 million as a loan. The state treasurer only set aside $20 million statewide for loans for any district. So they even underfunded the amount of money they set aside for loans. It is a mind-boggling situation.
But what is the good
Well,
news, which we're very thankful to the Department of Education in Trenton, if what we're hearing is true, a $65 million loan should be announced. Again, we don't have it in writing.
right.
It should be announced. So we are very thankful, even though we need 104 and going upward. Mr. Campbell, is there anything you want to add?
That's in a nutshell. We need the funds from the state of New Jersey.
Okay, Dr. Winters, how do you want to continue here?
Okay, at this time, we can take questions. If anyone has any questions, please unmute yourself and ask the question. Okay, it says, what year did Lakewood stop separating public versus private schools? Because when I sent my children, I don't know what happened to, let's see. What year did Lakewood stop separating public versus private school? Because when I sent my children to private school, we paid for everything and received no courtesy busing.
First of all, I want to make it clear, the only students who are getting courtesy busing in Lakewood, New Jersey are public school students, and that courtesy busing is being paid for by Lakewood Township. We are not paying non-public courtesy busing for any private school child. Number two, the law requires that public, non-public, and private school children, they all have the same busing rules, if you will, as well as reimbursement. Is there another question?
Does anyone have a question? Okay, let's see.
I do.
Okay, go
I have
ahead.
a question.
Sure.
I know that you said that there's 20 million, they only put 20 million aside instead of the 100 million that they would have needed for loans. And that we have neighboring towns. Toms River's in 12.5 million, I think the last I read. Jackson selling the one school. Howell's now having problems. Why are they bailing Lakewood out and not the others? Like, that's what we've been down the road before. We know that. However, this year feels a little different because there are neighboring towns that are having the same issues.
I'm going to respond
So
to
how
that.
are we guaranteeing?
Michael,
I'm
let me
Well,
respond.
I just want to say one thing.
Go ahead.
We're not here to really respectfully worrying about other towns. We're here to worry about Lakewood. So
I agree.
1 minute, what they are doing or aren't doing in other towns is not of moment. But more importantly, we can prove, which the other towns cannot, that the funding formula as applied to Lakewood, due to our unique circumstance, there is not any other town in New Jersey that has about 4,500 public students and 50,000 non-public students. So we are an anomaly, and that they're not doing us any favor. They have to. Again, the question is how much, and we thank them. But we are unlike Jackson, unlike Howell. For example, Jackson has a thing called what's called phantom students. Once the funding formula was changed a few years ago, they realized that the enrollment is down. In Lakewood, the public school enrollment is down, but the non-public enrollment is much higher. But I just saw another question.
Okay, there is another question here on the chat. It says, how long can the district last on 32.5 million? Will public schools get the money first, or will the money go to reimbursing the private school fund we have been pulling from?
So the answer to that is, first of all, if what we're hearing is correct, which we should know shortly, it will be 65 million of which there will be two payments of 32.5, one in February, one in May. We do have an obligation to reimburse the special revenue non-public funds, to reimburse the special revenue funds, but we will be able to pay our bills. Kevin, through when do you think?
Probably toward May, the end of May.
May. Is there another question?
Yes, what happens if we do not get the loan and teachers do not get paid on February 28th?
There is about a 0% chance of that happening. The state is not into taking over districts any longer. They did that failed experiment in Patterson, Jersey City, Newark. There is no talk of them taking over our system here in Lakewood. And we should know by next week. When is our board meeting, Dr. Winters?
February 29th, next Wednesday.
So we should
19th.
19th. So
19th.
February 19th. So we should know by then. Is there another question, Doctor?
Yes, the 65 million will last us the rest of the school year. What happens next year and the year after that?
Well, first of all, it won't last us the full year. It will last us till May. And then hopefully they will reassess. Just so you know, to the credit of the business office, the business administrator, and the state monitor, the state is getting weekly or bi-weekly statements of our cash flow, of our board minutes, so they are aware of what's going on. But the 65 will not carry us past May. As far as next year and the year after that, I am not a prophet, but as Mr. Finger said, unless there's something done with the funding formula, we will continue to seek loans. Go
Okay,
ahead.
the next question is, how did a budget get made and passed that included funds not in hand or guaranteed? Did you purposefully push for this so that the chaos it would create if the loan was not received would essentially force the state to either comply under duress or completely change the system? The welfare of the students and staff be damned. Why doesn't the Lakewood Public School District band with others to challenge the 1947 or whatever law that narrowly passed in the courts, ensuring that public school funds remain with public schools and are not used for those who choose alternative education institutions?
Let me just stop that. I'm not going to enter into that. The bottom line is, thank God you have 50,000 non-public students, because if you didn't, you wouldn't have the special revenue funds to be borrowing from to pay public school teachers. As far as the $104 million, that was in a budget that was sent to the county and the state, Kevin, in March.
March, and then a public hearing in
May.
May.
And it was in fact approved for one day, but it was approved. So no one has done anything untowardly here. The fact is we need the money, as Mr. Finger explained. Is there another question?
Yes, if we are $40 million short, what is going to be cut to make up that difference?
Again, the administration, the superintendent, and the board are not looking to cut anything. There's a commitment from the superintendent. The only one who can fire people is the superintendent, reduction in force. Dr. Winters, you've made a commitment to the board and staff that you have no part of that, correct?
That is correct.
Now, if the state monitor wants to do that, that's her prerogative, but there's been no discussion of that occurring. Next question.
Would the district close schools as well in order to help this deficit?
What this district is looking to do to raise money, as you know, behind the high school, there's a cemetery, a Jewish cemetery. That property cannot be used really for anything other than burying people. We have started to look at, we once sold recently property there for about $1 million, which went into the public fund. We are in the process of looking of selling additional land, which cannot be built on, does not affect any school property, and we're in the process of doing that. As far as closing schools, as you all know or should know, Pinehurst is rented from the Archdiocese. We have one more year on that lease, which is about $500,000 a year. There will be looks, not for this coming year, but the following year, to consolidate if possible. Go ahead, Doctor.
Can the state refuse to give us loans?
The state can do whatever the hell they want. They're the state. However, that would be suicidal, where we would have 4,500, of which 99% are minority and poor, having no school to go to. So I don't think that's going to happen.
The next question is, you have mentioned teachers. What about paras?
When we say teachers, we mean paras, secretaries, child study team members, therapists, administrators.
Okay, the next one. When we show up to work next week and never get the letter from the state on the 19th, then we could be working for free as it's a new pay period. What would happen at that point?
No one is being asked to work for free. Some of you may remember when we bussed quite a few buses to Trenton. If we don't get the letter next week, we are asking Ms. Shaw and the union to join us in taking a bus ride by the thousands to Trenton.
The next question is, our pre-K program funded separately from our public fund?
Pre-K is considered part of public. There are special funds that are used for pre-K in addition to regular funds, but it's all considered public school. And the one area where we're showing an increase in enrollment is our preschool public programs.
Okay, the next question, you said there won't be any RIFs. Is that just for the current year or does it include the next school year?
We can only talk about 1 year at a time. I know other districts around here are talking about RIFs for this year. We are not talking about that.
Okay, there are no more questions in the chat. Does anyone else have a question?
Oh, 1 minute. Someone just wrote something about
Kelly
the question.
Bella. Kelly Bella has a question. Kelly, would
Can
you like to
I-
ask a question?
Can I ask it? It's a little, I'm bringing it on behalf of, people didn't want to have any, feel like we have a lot of non-tenured staff. So I told them I would speak their questions on behalf of them.
Well, that's a shame because whether you're tenured or not, we cherish you the same amount and we're all on the same side.
So I guess the concern was, in the past, the Lakewood School District has expressed a commitment to social and emotional learning and its role in creating a supportive environment, obviously, for our students and as well as our staff. However, given the current financial uncertainty and concerns about payroll, I would like to, and I'm reading what this person wrote. I would like to know how recent district walkthroughs align with creating a supportive environment.
We're not going to address that tonight. This is about funding.
Yeah, no, I think that the teachers are feeling nervous and concerned, and
that is why we met with the LEA, and I want to thank the LEA. It was a Thursday night and Friday, if I remember correctly. This is not about, we're doing this to hopefully get less nervousness,
right?
More, but we're not going to speak about walkthroughs tonight. Is there another question?
And then the other question, it was just brought to me, but I think it's not a problem, was if the district is closed, because obviously we are getting funded, but I have an obligation to ask questions on behalf of my members, or our members. How would this affect people on a leave of absence, particularly a family leave? So obviously, I think that's a non-question, but a question at this point.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a non-question.
And then I guess the other concern was if the district was aware of these budgetary challenges, why was this issue only recently publicly addressed?
Well, actually, the public was aware of these issues. We invite any union member to come to any meeting, as we did last meeting, but it was known back in March that we needed 104 million. We've been waiting for the state to contact us. Every year since 2015, they've either sent a letter by this time or sent money. Initially, we were told they want to do a review of our finances. That was done. Then we were told there's going to be a mid-year meeting with the county office. That was done. And now at this point, we're waiting. To be candid, where's the money? We're not going to wait much longer, though. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Dr.
you,
Winters,
Kelly.
any questions?
Yes, there are a few more. Will this deficit have implications on summer programs such as ESY?
By law, we have to provide extended school year to special education students by way of their IEP. The answer is no.
Okay, if we do not get the funds from the state, and if you elected for summer pay and have been getting this pay deducted from your check, will we get that money before we stop getting paid?
Summer pay, from what I understand, is money that's taken out of your 10-month check.
Correct.
And that is kept in a separate fund. I'll say separate. It's part of the general fund, but there is no plan to use that money, nor, in my legal opinion, could we use that money.
No, that's segregated out and separate, and it's their money. We can't touch that.
Okay, any other questions?
Yes, are all the private schools getting paid first?
I have no idea what the hell that means. Are they getting paid first? If you're talking about a private school for the disabled, such as Center School, Collier School, Alpha School, Shy School, Center School, those are considered public schools. As far as non-public schools, I repeat now for the fourth time, thank God you have them, because we've borrowed tens of millions of dollars of their money to pay public funds. Go ahead, Dr. Winters.
We continue to borrow money. How do we pay it back, and with what funds? How much money do we actually have on our own before we borrow any amount?
I think Mr. Finger went through that. So next question.
Okay. Once again, if the state funds don't go through, is the last check we get the last of the February, meaning we will at least get paid on February 28th?
It is our understanding that that payment will go through.
Okay. You say the potential loans will only get us to May. What happens in May for paychecks?
We meet again like this and we unite, as we have done with the union here, to let our voices be known.
How much does it cost to run the district on a monthly basis, and how much have we borrowed from the private schools?
Mr. Campbell, how much have we used?
The last that we've calculated was about $30 million.
So $30 million of private non-public schools money has been loaned, if you will, to the public. Go ahead, Ms. Winters.
You mentioned 9 million was supposed to go to special needs. Why would you divert the funds to the gen ed classes, and how would you pay special needs back?
I'm sorry?
That's the question. You mentioned 9 million was supposed to go to special needs. Why would you divert the funds to the gen ed classes, and how would you pay special needs back?
9 million was supposed to be for extraordinary aid, which is based on public school children's special ed needs. It wasn't given. Go ahead.
Could you clarify what happens for Tuesday and Wednesday if the letter does not come in from the state, and how will we be paid?
Payroll is always paid first.
Payroll is always paid first. Okay.
Okay, it said a few of us could not get in right away. Can you recap the first few minutes? But
No, we're going to send a video out of this to all staff. I will be out tomorrow morning. You can watch it then.
all right, we have 4,500 kids that Trenton recognizes, but private school kids with an IEP are recognized as public school. How many total kids?
There are 45, again, maybe you should, how many total public school children are there, Dr. Winters?
There are approximately 4,500 students in the public schools. But
Which
it
Is
says-
that
include,
Is that
hold on.
including?
No,
the
we're
children?
we're not doing that.
But I thought that you said that the funds.
1 minute,
are also-
ma'am,
Yes.
we're going to wait to be recognized. 1 second, please.
Well, that's my question that she's addressing. That's why I was asking.
Well, let
I
us
wanted
just
to
finish it.
clarify.
Let us just finish it. There's
ahead.
4,500 public school students, which includes about 380 students who have IEPs.
It says, but
Are
private
they,
schools
are
with an
there
IEP.
those IEPs sent to private schools, that the tuition for a private school, or those IEPs in the public schools?
Those are IEPs for schools like Alpha, Collier, Chi, Center, and other schools that are considered public schools. Dr.
But
Winters?
why doesn't Trenton recognize them? I'm just curious. I want to know
No,
why Trenton.
Trenton does, let me make it clear. Trenton does recognize them under the extraordinary aid formula. They're supposed to be paying approximately 9 million, Mr. Finger said, and they're just not, it's
So we
not,
should have, had the extraordinary aid been fully funded, which it hasn't been by the legislature for years, we would have gotten an extra $9 million more last year in extraordinary aid. Again, the way extraordinary aid works, students that are going to an out-of-district private school for the disabled, the district is required, if I remember correctly, the first $55,000 in tuition, it's on the district, has to pay it. And once you get above that level, you then request extraordinary aid to cover the difference. But again, the legislature has not been fully funding it, not just for Lakewood, for every district in the state. Last year, they only funded it at approximately 60 or 62% of what was requested. So had it been fully funded, we would have gotten an extra $9 million reimbursement towards what has been spent above that 55,000 per student, and we would have had a smaller loan last year. But again, legislature has not been fully funding that.
next question, doctor.
Private schools, do their loans get paid back first as opposed to the state loan?
Well,
They didn't?
let me
I
answer
think they
this.
might mean tuition.
Well, I think what they mean is the money we're using from special revenue. Special revenue has to be paid back. Go ahead.
Are non-public and private schools the same thing?
No, private schools for the disabled, like Collier, Alpha, Chi, Center, are considered public school students. Non-public students are Calvary and the numerous yeshivas we have, which I think exceeds 140. Next question.
If we do not get paid on February 28th, can our summer pay money be used then instead of in the summer?
It
I
could
would have
be.
I would have to take that under advisement.
Yeah.
That would be an option. My preliminary but not final legal analysis is that if it belongs to the teacher, he or she would have the right to do that. Next question.
We borrowed 30 million from private. Is it correct to say that the 32 million we may get in March will go to pay that loan back? If that's correct, then we really will only have 34 million for the rest of the school year. Where will the rest of the funds come from?
Mr. Campbell?
That's just the cash we received. We also have received reimbursements for other stuff that came in recently for IDA, title, and some other charges out there. So there's been money that's been coming in to cover some of that stuff.
Okay, what happens to our
Let me
health
just
benefits?
explain one thing. All of these non-public funds we're talking about, not private school, but non-public, these are all grants. It's a state of New Jersey law. For example, Chapter 226 is nursing money for non-public children. IDA, non-public, is a grant. It's not like we don't even get to choose the number. We get a piece of paper, a printout. Here is your nursing non-public money. Here is your IDA non-public money. These are all grants. They are not coming from local funds, and they're not coming from public funds. Go ahead, doctor.
What happens to our health benefits if we do not receive a paycheck?
The health benefits were paid.
Okay.
The next one says, agreed. If these loans do not go through, how long after will health insurance benefits be terminated?
We
I
can't
can't answer that right now.
We are of the, let me say this. We did this, Kim, you might remember this. We did this, I know it was in like the summer or June something, 2 or 3 years ago, where we closed school for a day. And if you recall that, we are inviting the LEA to meet with the administration and superintendent. If we don't have a letter Our next meeting is by the 19th, right, Doctor?
Yes.
Maybe we have to think of something dramatic, like on the 18th. If we don't have a letter, we may have to close school for a day. But we could discuss that further.
And the next one is, if there are no funds to pay staff after February, would you expect us to continue coming to work?
Absolutely not. You have a right to get paid.
Okay. But aren't those grants only earmarked for what they are intended? In other words, money for IDA can only be used for special ed. Is that correct?
IDA is special ed, 226 is nursing, 192 is supplemental, 193 is examination. Those are all non-public funds that we have nothing to do with determining how much. We are told that by the state. Next.
Can you please clarify that you expect staff to continue to show for work without confirmation of loans from the state?
No one's expecting anything. We're in this together.
If that were to happen and we need to close the school for a day, do we make up that day at the end of the year, and will we be penalized in that way?
I can't answer that, but you do have to have a certain amount of school days per year. But magically, 2 or 3 years ago, when we closed school for a day, magically a letter came very soon thereafter.
Can we claim unemployment after February 28th if funding is not approved?
If you don't get paid, you can collect unemployment. That is my opinion, but seek your own counsel.
Okay, that there are no more questions on the chat.
And it's 7:50.
Does anyone have any questions?
We want to thank you all. We appreciate your dedication. As I get older, I can't say I still have teachers who work here. I might still have one or two, but we thank you all. We are going to send this out by tomorrow for all staff. Someone's asking now, let me just finish. We're sending it to all staff tomorrow. You will have a recording of this. We want to thank the state. We want to work with the state. We want to collaborate with the state. Just a different administration currently. Up till this year, we had a direct line to the commissioner's office and assistant commissioner's office. That line doesn't exist. The current state monitor, who is new to the district, is still on a learning curve, understandably so, and is waiting with us to find out information. Thank you, Dr. Winters, Mr. Campbell, Mr. Finger, and our dedicated staff.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.